Back to GBOH, in this case, again, more Alexander. Phalanx, tiny module, 2 battles. Not a whole lot of pieces, not a whole lot of map in either case. You do see the Spartan pieces that show up in, I'm trying to think what it was, the Daidochi, or Daidochoi module here. And I kind of wonder if there were a couple of C3I scenarios and they didn't want to force you to buy this module when they had maybe extra room for counters to put in that one. I'm not sure, you know, what the story is, or it might be that there's just nothing related to it, and it's fine. I'm less excited as I was back when I was doing SPQR over there in terms of like, oh, I must have all the possible battles. I still would probably get to them because I like the system so much. First thing you notice with this one is, actually both of these, terrain, what the fuck? Hate it, man. That doesn't belong in my GBOH. Yeah. So in this case, we've got the Spartans. This is a little later than the Daidochoi. You've got the Spartans going against the Antigonide successor in Macedonia. And the Spartans are set up with some sort of entrenchment here, and there's rules for that. But they've actually deployed or crossed it already, which, whatever. Let's see what we got here. Anything terribly exciting? Probably are turning it towards the Macedonians. It's hard to tell because Berg wrote this part, or this module, and he doesn't always like to be definitive. So Demetrius and Cercides. Well, let's take a look at the forces, actually. We've got a mixture, and there was some flexibility in deployment here in terms of which exact units go in which hexes. The hexes and the sets of units that go in them are the same, but it's like the elephant skirmisher lines sometimes and stuff like that, where they're expressed as a big block. You figure out what you want. So here I've got skirmishers over on the flank, going to light infantry, going to medium infantry, figuring I want to have the weight in the front, but kind of, I don't know, more firepower to the flank and the bad terrain. Here we've changed things up a little bit since they set up second. I kind of interspersed some medium infantry in order to give me a little bit more oomph in fighting back. Double death phalanxes over here, for whatever that's worth. There's not a lot of maps, so yeah, I don't think I'll get much chance to unstack them. Nasty mountainous terrain here. This is a 2-level rise all at once with rough terrain, etc. And you got peltists mounted on there, and then a mixture of, it counts as hoplites, whatever it is, but or heavy infantry, and some cav in the center and some light infantry in the center over here. Over on this side, we got a mixture again of medium infantry and peltists. Should probably be outclassed. Historically, I guess they made it up here and kind of flanked the Spartans. That continues along the river here. Then a line of, again, hoplite Macedonians, basically, and, well, not Macedonian allies, and then more allies back here, including a contingent from Megalopolis, which has to be the best name for a city. It's like big city. It sounds like it comes from a bad comic book. What do we got on the command restrictions. We got different, well, we talked about the command restrictions. Demetrius and Circadius can command only infantry units, and that's here and here. There aren't a lot of non-infantry, so that's not a big deal. Alexander can command only cavalry units. That's this little line here. So he's pretty limited in his effect. We have some line eligibility. The Macedonian phalanxes consist of their own line. So that's just this is a line, a possible line. All the heavy infantry can be consolidated into lines. The medium light infantry, peltists, and skirmishers can all be consolidated into a line together. And the light cavalry can be used as a line. Not that I think that's important because he can command all of it, so who cares? Over on the other side, we got this Eucidides here, can only command infantry. The lines, the Spartan phalanx is a line. The heavy infantry can be counted as a line. That's this section here. The medium lights and peltists can all be done as a line, and that's basically this. I mean, you could get other units in there. And the light cavalry can be a line. We have no restrictions on the light cavalry. This dude can go up there. What does he have on him? He's got words like any. Oh, so they put what kind of units can be commanded on there. This. The counters are a little busy already. I don't know how I feel. Okay. What about the terrain? Well, we're going to need to take a look at the terrain things. So these are all considered minor rivers, which means they cost an extra movement point and pretty much cost a cohesion hit for anything that tries to cross them. Okay, that's going to be a pain. What about roads? We got a road. Roads don't seem to have any effect. We've got one on the board here. There's a ford. That's where the road crosses. Again, that doesn't seem to have any definition here. They don't say anything about these other terrain types here. They don't have it here. So yeah, I'm assuming the ford just doesn't matter. See what else we got here. We got level changes. We got the rocky terrain, which costs just a normal movement point to enter. But it does cohesion hits to infantry and cavalry. It's especially bad to the cav. What about that slope? That's a nasty looking thing. Steep slope. Let's see what we got here. That's just the 2-level. Costs extra movement points, costs significant penalties, especially going up. Even skirmishers take 2 cohesion hits going up that. So this is a major feature. But yeah, remember, every time you go up a level, or down a level with infantry for that matter, you're paying cohesion hits. So hilly terrain is just painful in this system. The reason why I'm like, oh no, we're playing in terrain, it's painful to use. Okay, what about the special scenario terrain, which is the fortification? Oh, the gullies. The gullies, where are gullies? It says gullies. I don't see any gullies. I don't see gully listed here. They talk about them here. The gullies cost +1 movement point to cross, including a cohesion hit for all units except skirmishers. Is that the road? No, it says road. Yeah, I don't know what they're talking about. I'm just going to ignore it. You know, that may be the fortifications. Okay. As you can see on the map, fortifications cost 1 movement point extra to cross, and all incur a cohesion hit to do so, including skirmishers. Yeah. So, oh, wait a minute. Is there some kind of shading here that? Yeah, I don't see gullies. I'm going to ignore them unless I discover them. Any unit defending behind a fortification, that would be over on the Spartan side, reduces cohesion hits incurred by 1. Now, from what? I'm assuming during combat, clearly the clash of arms, roar of spears, whatever, I don't know, table, when you do the shock combat result, clearly that applies, but I think it also is going to apply to the TQ checks. It would make sense, and it doesn't specify either way, so whatever. Any unit attack across a fortification hex side adds 1 hit. Attacking across a fortification hex side adds 1 hit to any losses incurred. Okay. So yeah. So if you're going this way, you take more hurt. And I think that will also include the TQ check. Again, not clear, but add 1 to all missile fire die rolls that go through a fortification hex side. That appears to be in either direction. It's harder to shoot around, even when you're in the entrenchment. This little thing, anything there, it's a 2-level up-down slope. It appears the Illyrians were successful in infiltrating around it and taking it. Retreat edge is nothing too exciting. Oh, actually, there are specific hexes. 10-13 for the Macedonians, probably the road, and the Spartans, southern edge, or from 29-27, probably here and down. Okay. Route points, the Macedonians have 95 route points. The Spartans only have 75. And that is about it. They gave the Spartans a little bit more morale than they would have just by points. Okay, I'll come back to play. I think I've got this here. So we've got trench and palisade as 2 different things. The palisade runs along the gully. I think the intention here is the gullies are in addition to the palisade. Because otherwise this isn't a very big deal. And in fact, if all units are shock attacking across a gully, a 2 left column shift, if only some a 1 left column shift, wouldn't be in play. It looks to me like you're meant to be putting both into play. It doesn't specify that in a nice way. Anyway, we rolled off because both sides have crappy leaders, level 3 initiative, and we're going to get Alexander here. And I don't know what the hell he's going to do with Cav in this situation. It does not look pleasant, but maybe there's an opening to try to trim away some of this medium infantry. The best thing is harassment techniques, because then I don't actually have to pay the cohesion penalties for moving. And we're seeing why I don't like playing with terrain. We got Macedonians trying to creep around the side here, others crossing the stream. Things were so densely packed that only one of the cav could withdraw, the other one's routed. That's going to be a problem. It's very hard to cope with, and mechanically becomes a lot more painful. More on the level of when you're playing, so the musket and pike games, the later ones started to incorporate more and more difficult terrain and making the game harder and harder to cope with. And I have the feeling that they tweaked the rules a little bit to make the terrain harder because it was too easy to deploy stuff and deal with stuff. And it makes sense. It's historically accurate. You don't want to use these armies. Hoplite armies in the hills and such are not the best place, but this is where they grew up, It's not the most fun to deal with because you're marching these big formations over unpleasant terrain. It's not like, I don't know, a small squad of infantry, which relate more to skirmishers. The problem is in terms of playability, it just stops being as much fun to play the battles out when they're not on these wide open plains as they usually were in the ancient battles. The amount of detail in the movement design for this is the issue. And again, you see it in the battles of the Age of Reason. You see it in Labatt, and you see it more in Musket and Pike. And I don't like having to deal too much with that kind of stuff. I don't know why. It's an irritating level of fiddliness to me. Whereas with all the counter flipping and everything, somehow that doesn't bother me as much. It's just maybe it's because I'm not used to dealing with it as much. I don't know, but it has never pleased me to deal with that level of having to just whatever. It's just more painful. That's all. Had been to get these guys back behind the line because I don't know what they're doing out there, but I don't like them. Unfortunately, though, it's going to cost me a movement point to go across the gully, a movement point to go through the fortification, and a couple cohesion hits. So let's say I did it with this guy. He would have to turn 2 hex sides. That's 2 movement points. 3, 4, 5, 6. He can't even get there, and his ass would be showing. I think I have to attack. Just because there's the advantage to launching the attacks. I don't like it, but it's what it looks like I gotta do. Back to the problem of, do you get to fire your missiles twice in reaction fire when the enemy approaches you and is firing missiles? So I did some arguments about that. Hey, if I've got archers or gunmen or something like that, they do kind of have to stop and fire. You can probably make that argument with slingers. What you can't make that argument with so much is the elephant riders. But this is the ones with the javelins. Basically, it depends on the weapon you're armed with, is which way the argument should go. And unfortunately, neither of the solutions, neither the way the original rules are written, which is kind of ambiguous, but seems to imply that, if I fire my missiles, you get a reaction fire when I move next to you, and you get a reaction fire when I fire my missiles. That's what it seems to imply. 5th edition rules came out with some sort of correction on that, which makes sense with javeliners. If you're running up with your javelin, you don't have time. The defensive javelins do get to throw, but you're not really slowing yourself up by throwing your javelin. You have a second one in hand to engage, a second weapon in hand to engage with. You don't stop and draw your second weapon or anything like that, so you're not exposing yourself to more fire. I'm going to continue with what I've been doing, but I'm really kind of uncomfortable and feel like there should be a weapons-based determination on that. Of course, the game is so full of complexities, etc., that maybe the 5th edition rules are the best choice of all. I don't know. In the end, it's a pretty minor advantage, right? I have a slight chance of causing an additional point of quality hit by throwing my javelin. And I don't know. It's probably not that worth thinking about. That's embarrassing. Just got routed by skirmishers. Afraid to face them. Yeah. And that was a painful mess. I mean, you can see both lines are kind of broken up. Some losses here. Routes on each side, a rally being attempted, but another unit routing over here. These double-depth phalanxes are an impassable terrain that killed the one retreating Antigonine unit. And I think that puts us to one last command. I don't know if I have the soul to do this. The series of attacks here took a lot out of me. I guess we'll see. Final push, and these should be inverted, but they're not right now. Some of those double phalanx units were thrown into the combat, and boy did they smash away that medium and light infantry really easily. And now I got cleanup at the end of the turn, which is a lot of unflipping and some routed units moving. It doesn't look like much, 5 to 10, whatever. On the field, though, yeah, it looks pretty bad for the Spartans already. Holes beginning to open up over here. Now, granted, this formation is not in a position to do anything, but what am I going to do? Cross the barrier that I've got that I'm defending and take a couple of cohesion hits? It's worth it if I'm hitting something reasonable. I'm not sure that's reasonable. That's not that hurt, but it may be the only option I have is to try to clear this border quickly, because otherwise the Antigonenes can destroy these units, gather up the points for them, recover, and then consider whether they want to launch their double phalanxes forward or whether they've won the battle over here, where it looks like they have an advantage as well. So I don't know. The problem with the whole situation is I got so many routed units I got to do something about too. So I can't just launch an attack to try to save my units. That initial setup pretty much, as far as I'm concerned, doomed the Spartans from a situation where they were in a good defensive position potentially, where maybe they could, make up for a slight numerical disadvantage. I'm not sure there's any particular reason why the Macedonian forces should attack that position, except that the two armies agreed to fight, right? It's kind of a, well, yeah. You come out from beyond those defensive works and we'll fight. Otherwise, maybe we'll just demonstrate. Okay, what had happened here? I fired off the two cav leaders. They're the low quality leaders. First one, I hope he doesn't have any cav kicking around. That's routed. Push the light cav up. Didn't get a continuation. And the thing is, I started thinking about the H&C, the harassment tactics, whatever. Sounds like an abortion procedure to me. What is it called? H&D, harassment and dispersal. Okay. Anyway, and it's this weird abstraction in the game, both for the cav, but it's most important for the cav, but honestly for the infantry too, where, you don't take the terrain into account or anything like that, that if you were riding over that terrain, you would be impacted by this shit. And it feels a little funny to me in a game that takes so much detail and so many other things to put that abstraction in place. Of course, it's a later addition, because you couldn't do what the cav actually would, or skirmishers for that matter, would do in terms of running up and then basically backing away and ending up facing in the right direction and everything. Just sort of, with cav, you can kind of see it a sweep around. You could see this kind of maneuver happening in Chariots of Fire. The chariots there were maneuverable enough that they could kind of do something like that. But you can't do the same kind of maneuver on the board using the normal rules. So this had to be added, but the problem is it first of all, it highlights the fact that the game doesn't give you enough detail to handle it, using the actual rules of movement. And then by dismissing some of the rules, it leaves you feeling like, well, maybe it doesn't make enough sense in a scenario like this where the terrain probably would actually disrupt the cav that we're trying to do that. Anyway, that's these guys moved forward to position themselves for such, and then this guy rallied himself a cav. I must have lost a cav. I don't know. I don't know what I lost, what I didn't. It looks like just light infantry there. I don't know. I thought he had 3 cav to begin with, but I can't find that third one. I looked, I swear. So I honestly don't. Maybe he only had 2 to begin with. And he, was able to rally, which was actually a pretty unlikely thing to happen. Anyway, we're back up on the 4s now, and there's a couple of them over here. One of those little mistakes that I just write off because undoing them is more pain than it's worth. And, vagaries and randomness in the battlefield, I don't trust that this model is meant to particularly represent everything perfectly. But anyway, I didn't notice this guy was supposed to go first, and fired off a 4 over on this side and launched attacks over here. And you can see, I'm trying to make my way up the hill. It didn't do me any good. And anyway, I'm going to jump over here. It's as if a trump had happened, but without the momentum, well, it couldn't have happened by the rules. What happened just now couldn't happen by the rules. But rules are almost inherently something that can't possibly represent the full extent of what could happen in a battlefield. So I got no problem with it. Roll of doom situation. I think I fucked something up again. Playing the wrong side, giving them the advantage. But it may not have been such an advantage because it ended up with a failed rally on a 9 against this. I think I got the die roll of doom here and transferred it over to this guy, which is absolutely wrong. Could have gone over to him, but maybe I'm mistaken. I don't know. Anyway, screw it. Again, making mistakes left and right as is my want. That's going to put us over to, I think, the first 5, but I don't know whose that is. I'll let this guy choose whose it is. I think he just got screwed. Managed to misuse that final activation, no doubt. It was actually kind of interesting. I was getting some really good luck on rallying compared to the Antigoneans, but then I decided to launch a Spartan over to hit these damaged units, thinking, I could get really lucky there, and great things could happen, right? Well, I got kind of unlucky and ended up routed instead, so this is going to go away. We're at the end of turn at this point, and that's going to be a hefty blow. That's 14 points right there. Maybe the added burden of the terrain and having to think about that is causing me to fuck up more. I don't know what. But yeah, this is really not not one of my finer playthroughs. Got 29 points against Sparta, 22 against the Macedonians, about, staying about equal. If I hadn't launched this thing, I'd be in much, much better shape sitting behind the fortifications. On the other hand, there's the why should I attack feeling that happens. There's not a clear you must attack as this player or anything like that. So I honestly don't know with scenarios like this. When there's a defensive terrain in place, I feel like there should be some kind of terrain reason for launching the attack and paying the price for going over it. And I've played in a number of GBOH scenarios where, well, when I'm playing solo, I'm just, kind of handcuffed with I don't know how to react with it. But when I'm playing against someone, I'll just pass and act like I'm just going to sit back here because, usually my opponent will get frustrated with that kind of activity and do something stupid. But yeah. But I'm perfectly capable of doing really stupid things on my own, as shown by the fact that I launched this against here. But my feeling was, hey, if I don't do that, he'll be able to wipe these units out. I don't see an issue with that. And recover his double phalanxes and then hit me with the good stuff. Well, hitting me with the good stuff against my defensive position might have been a better circumstance for me. Now I don't have enough frontage. I'm already getting kind of spread thin in a number of places. So it was a mistake to cross over, but it feels appropriate for the scenario somehow. Gap here, opening up room for mutual cav harassment. Basically, these guys fired off, they got to go first on the infantry, picking on some of the medium infantry. Then I used this guy to shift infantry around to defend the flank here. I'm going to have to build those units back up, and probably not going to do as good a job as the better commander over here. And then this guy back here moved Cav up into position and did, he got a couple of activations. Firing directly on the Cav, taking some return fire. Now we're back over here, and I'll try to remember to do it right this time. 4-point leaders to move over here. The first one trying to, get some positional advantage and an attack up here that routed the unit. Routed both units, really, because coming up the hill broke it up so much. But the other one came over to help rally some units. Didn't get the continuations he needed. And now that leaves this area kind of leaderless, but it's not really. And it's not like the Spartans have a bunch of leaders over here to spare either. They're relying on what's over here. And that gets us to a 5. We got one of them. Macedonians managed to turn around their left flank here. Mainly by using, and so these skirmishers that I was kind of making fun of having broken someone, they're decent skirmishers. They're not shit. They're the skirmisher stars, which are allowed to attack and have a very high capability. So they're just more like a very tiny band of elite units or elite troops. So anyway, we managed to rout everything in the front by hitting the flank there. We drove one off with the javelin, and then we hit one in the flank, and the other one we had outnumbered and hit that. Got a couple of continuations, so I was able to bring things back up to decent state. And now all these routed units, this guy was just basically rallying and readying his line, but now he's got these things coming through. And point-wise, things have gotten closer, 27 to 29, but that doesn't really matter. What matters is when you look at the field position, because we're not, right at the edge where somebody's going to break without something massive changing. And, I got this part of the line running away here. They'd be real helpful up here, anchoring the ditch and palisade there. I've got forces swerving around here without enough to really take advantage. Walking through this costs me 2, crossing the river, let's say I do it to here, costs me a third. I've taken 3 cohesion hits just to, start getting into position, and very quickly those units are going to be in a lot of trouble if they try leaving their defensive position. So it's not that big a deal that there's a gap right here. And there's reserve units to take up that front. The Macedonians are, the Antigonid Macedonians are in pretty good shape as far as I can see. I don't see any likelihood that their line's just going to break. They've got time to kind of try to rearrange things or to put pressure while units are routing away. Kind of their call here. Or maybe both. All right. My camera's giving me issues here, or the memory card. I don't know. It was starting to go bad in the old camera, so I think it's the card actually. But anyway, the terrain and the commander quality in this game, low commander quality, is preventing, but mainly the terrain, I think, is preventing the kind of, push back and forth that you see in most of the GBOH games that I've played so far. And we're seeing a lot more emphasis on rallying stuff. It also may have to do with die rolls. For example, this guy managed to rally a whole bunch of units, and he's not that good at it. He failed with one, but he was running back and forth doing shit. We had the cav raids going back and forth. But mainly the thing is, neither side really wants to just smash into the other when there's significant reasons not to on the table. We're back at the 4s now. All the 3s have gone. Again, an exchange of harassment techniques with the cav. Weird terrain is making me do weird things, like pushing my units more than I normally would because I can't go for a straight all-out attack. So, you know, I shove them a little harder around the outflank, which probably is something I should do more often in these games. But I tend not to want to wear out my units. But here I don't have much choice. Anyway, we managed to commit a little bit of nastiness, kill a couple of units out there, rout another one, and in pretty good shape. So we even attacked a routing unit. I usually don't do that, but because the engagement, the actual surface area that I'm attacking in any given place is so low, so small, it's just too easy to rally all the units. So hunting down the routers seems like a worthwhile act. That puts us to the remaining Spartan, which is over here. Nastiness around the hill is just getting downright ugly. Units cresting the hill, hitting that rough terrain and just falling apart from it. Pretty much that whole flank is just collapsing on both sides. Didn't get a second continuation here, which is a shame. I would have liked to have gone back and try to fix some of this stuff up. And now we're going to try to prepare for the big attack. Point spread's getting bigger again. A couple more Spartan units went off the board. That got me to 40 points. But the field situation's looking better. You know, this is pretty solid. Turning and running down and crushing these got rid of a big problem. Now, there's still an issue. I got an open flank here, but he's got a lot of routing units to cope with. Not this one. On the other hand, there's a couple of Spartans routing off the map, and I'm going to have to go deal with that. And at some point or another, this guy with a 3, or whichever, no, it's this guy, right? No, this guy can command anything. These guys can only command infantry. One of these guys is going to start screwing up his rally rolls. He's gotten... This guy was pretty successful this last time. Eusebius. Oh well. That's probably it for tonight. Wasted most of today, mainly just jacking off, but other than work, you know, but whatever. And, you know, this is kind of the thing. I complain about, wow, I don't get anything done, but it's not like life is that different. This is the kind of shit that I would waste my days on anyway. It was just this hope that maybe life would be better. Anyway, this thought that, you know, maybe the cost would cause something decent to change in me, but it won't. Fired off the shitty guys, and a little bit of exchange of missile fire by the Cav. This time, the weaker dude under there got more firepower out, or more successful firepower. And then some rallying and trying to shift some of these infantry over to cover the gap to whatever extent I can. My intention is to use Cleon over here to try to rally these guys and get some kind of response together, because we've broken their advance, but that could change very quickly. And that puts us over to the 4s over here. A couple of failures over here. I mean, yeah, we rallied, but we also lost a decent unit. You had to roll higher than a 7 to fail on that. Cleon went over here, but he's got a long walk and didn't get to rally in either of these, but he's a good leader. He got a continuation. Great. It's time to trump him. If I can break his continuation, this unit goes off the board, and this one makes it a good way towards being off the board. Actually, he can go off this way, so yeah, they both go off the board. Awesome. Yep. So that is going to cost the Spartans a good deal of points that they were hoping to regain or to retrieve. Yeah, to me, this is playing around the edges. It's gamey type material, right? I'm trumping in to prevent something from happening here. It's stuff that's really system dependent, not based on any particular strategy or, situational analysis of what actually could be happening in the simulation. No, I'm just playing the game. But sometimes when the terrain's like this, at least, the game forces me to do that rather than just let the battles unfold as they want to go. So weird to just move a few pieces, very few really, and not really do a whole lot in a GBOH game. Again, lousy leaders, bad terrain, overall not great leaders. So those two Spartan units ran off the map. We're at 51 to 34. We're getting pretty close with the Spartans. You know, what? One of these damn near takes him there. That brings him up to 65. So one of those, two of those, or one of those and a couple other units is all that they got left. And meanwhile, I'm jiggling around trying to get some positioning, not actually attacking here, just throwing some javelins because that's not a unit that has to engage. Over here things didn't get better for the Spartans. So, yeah, sure, there's this thing that's loose there, but that's, and possibly in danger, but there's also a big opening for whatever's coming through there to start causing issues. I don't think the Spartans have a chance at this point, but again, I just keep playing because why not? What am I going to do? Play something else, never actually get through all the games. And no reason to hurry. No reason at all. Forgot to pick up the camera. What has happened so far? A whole bunch. Whatever in the middle here. This guy moving over, trying to rally some forces. Actually, both of them moved over to try to push more into their what? They played around with the center, but this is where the interesting stuff happened. So first 4-leader hit, got a continuation, hit again, got another continuation, and I was like, that's it. Trumped over here with him. That bypasses him, giving him a no momentum, but this guy has as much as he needs. Well, as much as he can get. But basically here, with a couple of activities, I was able to route one of my own units and one of the enemy peltists. So this area is still kind of in a fluxy type thing. Basically, this guy ran around, commanded the unit to hit something from behind, ran back, commanded these guys to do shit, and then got trumped in. And then some attempts to clear out. And I know I'm not explaining it very well. It's hard. It's one of the reasons I try to catch up a little bit more. But now, this thing ran out of initiative, and we're over here. Just one activity over here. I did some rallying, which wasn't completely successful. Over here, a little bit of rallying, preparing the line again, and shifting some units around, didn't get any continuations. So that's the end of the turn again. I'll be back in a moment. I don't want to lie, so I came back, not a lot changed here. But yeah, and this is why I hate the terrain. And when you combine it with lousy leaders who can't command a lot of units, and especially with, the defensive works, etc., it's just such a pain to whittle your way through it. I'm not saying it's unrealistic. I'm just saying that it's not the GBOH that I'm used to, which has a sort of, I don't know, almost childlike, just push the units forward, smack them together and see what happens feeling to it. And here, I'm having to be cautious, trying to whip the units around, trying to do all kind of clever stuff, and then the units that were out, I have to bring back, and it's just, everything is this slow, tedious operation. It doesn't feel like I'm not even sure it is all that historical that, you'd be seeing all this fiddling around the edges. Most of the battles didn't sound like that. They were either grand plans of big outflanks or, smash in the front, right? Not a lot of, hey, most of the battlefield's not engaged and not really doing anything. And it's one of the problems with the GBOH system, to tell you the truth. It's not just this with its weirdness, but once units engage, they just kind of sit there and don't do anything because not usually to anybody's advantage to actually activate the combat. There are definite issues in the system as a whole. But when you start throwing the terrain in, they irk me more. In some ways, I grump about this, but this is the only time I think I've seen a GBOH game turn into this kind of attritional combat in the center while stuff is being attempted on the edges. So, this is a battle that's showcasing something that most of them don't. Whether or not it would really happen, I don't know. A lot of it is my reluctance. Hey, there's a heavy cost to the terrain. That's the point. And to the defensive structures. And I don't see facing them when I've got a numerical advantage with the Macedonians and can try to bypass them. And the Spartans have succeeded in throwing the Macedonians back here, again obtaining their defensive position more fully. And now we're running over to the fours. Again, skirmishing coming back this way. He ran over here, try to rally these units, but he was at the limit of his endurance, basically. A bit of craziness. Over here, this guy runs about doing some rallying, basically, including of the unit that was there and is now routed. Fails with a die roll of doom, gets a reactivation. I trigger that over here, and oh geez, he hasn't gone. Shit, I better go do him. I was able to launch, I repaired this and launched a heavy infantry up. The Peltast could have run away, but I looked at it and I'm like, it's a pretty good one. This is pretty crappy. We got a good chance. Well, we lost the odds. Obviously, we're attacker superior hitting that, so. But this thing had accumulated hits trying to climb the hill and everything, and I thought the Peltasts had a good shot, and I didn't want to give up the terrain. And now I gave up the terrain and I'm routing, which is how I gave it up. Moved things over here, and then bounced over. That's the thing. I have so little leadership that I'm bouncing leaders back and forth in a way that, again, doesn't feel at all reasonable, but the game system is encouraging it. And then went back over here and he did some rallying work, including destroying that poor thing. And again, a high roll for that. That gets us back to Cleo. And it's time to unleash the attack. I'm just not able, I don't have enough command capacity to get around there with any effectiveness. Hitting them head on. Let's see what happens. Hope for the best. Here's a problem. Any units defending behind a fortification reduces cohesion hits incurred by 1. Any units attacking add 1 hit to any losses incurred. That doesn't specify, and I had made the decision, hey, that's going to count the TQ check. That's a little weird because TQ checks are usually, do you panic in approaching it? I don't think that's actually what's intended, because the main thing is the automatic loss. I don't mind the automatic defense. It's kind of cool. But the automatic loss of a TQ, wow, that's really, really painful. And that's part of why I haven't launched this attack. But yeah, we're going with it. And here's the initial result of it, with a break in the center. But we also broke one of these. Remember, when these double-sized units, not just double depth, but regular double-sized units, hit multiple units, they're able to direct all their damage to one unit. So yeah, you can really kind of abuse a line of smaller units by hitting them with the big guys. But I ended up smacking the big ones with the big ones too, and I mean, my hope is the double depth gives me sufficient damage absorption capacity that at least hold them into place. Because these things aren't likely to be fighting anymore. They're locked now, as far as I can tell. But by locking them, I can make an attack here. I can try to bust this up where I have the advantage and throw more units in. We'll see. And this is the end, his activation. He launched an attack with this again. I don't know what the hell else he did. Some rallying and shit. But didn't get a second continuation, which is a big deal because these crossed that barrier. One of them almost routed trying to get over the wall. You know, if it wasn't a double-sized unit, it would have been routed. But remember, they have some added endurance. But yeah, now I've got a flank exposed. I'm not allowed to wheel with this thing, so you know, it's in a lot of trouble for having won that fight. But that might open something interesting up, who knows. And we've taken the hits. Let me recuperate for end of turn, and that's probably it for a while today. And with the points at 46 to 51 now, things are a little bit closer. Yes, there's a couple of routing units here and maybe a lot to do. This is a huge risk. 14 more puts him to 60. 14 more on top of that puts it to 74. Still not quite, you know, where we need to be, but to lose. But I think impatience got the better of me. I couldn't handle what seemed like a non-moving situation, and I have such numerical superiority. What could I do? Well, I could have continued shifting these things over to threaten this side and brought the heavies up to this way, but they crossed the river, they hit the wall, they're in ugly shape. You know, it really, the terrain is really defining this battle so heavily in terms of, you know, what eventually happens. And I don't know that this is going to fail, right? These things have remarkable resiliency. If I had gotten another command, well, I couldn't do anything about this. I can't unstack this unit. That's the problem. Why can't I? Because it's too damaged. Somebody's got to extricate him, or he can just march forward if he's not locked into zones yet. But he can't march forward because this unit would immediately hit a route level if I do so. And I don't think I can force my unit into a route situation with the thought that it will probably survive. I think it's just stopped and is stuck there like a boulder in the middle of the battlefield. So, yeah, this is not a great situation for the Macedonians. Anyway, that's it for now. Got other stuff I need to do. Getting close sometime, right? I mean, this is just taking forever for such a tiny little battle. But, again, terrain. I told you from the beginning. It started out with this guy, horsey exchanges along with him. He ran down in Pelopidas. He ran down and tried to rally these. Well, he set himself up in a position where he was ready to rally those when he rolled for continuation. Got it. And this is kind of one of those, hey, I don't really care if I trump him. He's got, you know, basically a 40% chance of rallying these units. He's just not doing any harm. In general, I haven't been doing a lot of trumping. In general, I don't like to do a lot of trumping, especially with lousy leaders. I mean, the best chance I have in this is a 60% chance of success, which probably will be giving up my best leader if I fail. So, you know. And a whole buttload of reorganization happening down along here as I try to shift out of the way of those Phalanx units that they're not great. Actually, hoplite units. I don't necessarily want them in the line, but I might as well be taking advantage of this flank as much as I can, since they will be able to hold the line. I'm not going to see some kind of big outflank happening if I can move them forward in time in the right ordering and whatever, which is an iffy thing. That gets me to Cleon. Cleon's his big deal is probably to try to destroy this. That's probably his major goal. A few times I remembered, and is applicable, the push of shields side of things, which is if you've taken 3 times the cohesion hits of an individual enemy unit, well, I thought it might be twice. It's not. And I don't have quite enough. I'm hitting this with 3, and these each have 7 on them. That means they each get to make saving rolls, though, and multiple rolls, because if they succeed in their save, they're still in an enemy zone, and rolling for 6s then to see if they rout again, and they might just continue rolling and rolling, as far as I can tell. And I'm wrong about that, rolling and rolling. Or joking about that, I'm not looking it up. If you fail, so let's say you're 1 away from breaking, you get to make 1 roll for that. And if you fail that, you get a saving throw against it. So it won't just continue forever, which would be obnoxious. Anyway, they survived it. Let's see if Cleon gets himself a continuation. He does, and that might win Trump. So this is the problem. This could be, you know, the game type situation. I got a 60% chance of canceling him out. Otherwise, he might bust up something that I do not want busted. So I'm going to take a shot at it. And I succeed. So he's out, and we're up here. Every damn time I do something over here against these fortifications, against any of the fortifications, I guess. Although here I just went up and demonstrated through some spears and did not attack. I'm regretting it. Here I thought I had numerical superiority locally, and then realized, oh shit, I ran up against a phalanx. So again, mistake, but I had to call these guys in. They almost broke. Everything went wrong. You can see 3 of my units fleeing away, and then I don't get the continuation off of it. This is a really painful scenario because there's a patience issue to continuing to try to work your way around. I'm pretty sure I could just win it if I was patient enough as the Macedonians without much worry. But it gets tiring. And, you know, I do stupid stuff. Yes, I have a huge superiority unit-wise with those double-depth guys, but, you know, it's not getting me the breakthrough that I need here. And I can't get away as long as I'm locked into this guy's zone. I just can't get away from him, and that's a problem. I can't even move except by being careful not to hit any terrain. I might have been able to move earlier in the turn. Like, I was very worried. So last turn I couldn't move because he had already moved. This turn, had I trumped in, I might have been able to run him down. But then I just get slammed from the back. You know, I mean, it really isn't that big a benefit to be able to run him through the line. So I don't think I made a huge mistake by leaving him there, although he is now locked in and can't go anywhere at this point. And only the top unit can leave. That's their hurt. On the right side, these guys aren't going to attack back, but these guys might come around and flank them. And I just lost whatever was covering my flank there. So I may figure out a way for the Macedonians to lose this all yet. things out with some repair work over here on the edges where I can maybe get an outflank. And Cav attacked, no response because I sent this guy over this way, and this guy's infantry only, I think. And now we're on to the fours. And we'll see if they can do something interesting because I'm worried I'm going to lose the battle over here. A sequence of actions made the outflank dig its way through, busted this unit up, and Cleon tried to trump and failed, which means we're still here. I got both commanders available. This is looking a lot better for the Macedonians right now. But as we begin to wrap around here, this guy failed miserably on 2 rally attempts. That's 11 more points. That's still not going to, but it's going to even up the point values. And we're in position to launch those flank attacks without much being able to stop me with this. This guy gets a first attack. So bad stuff is about to happen to the Macedonians. After launching an attack, getting a continuation, a trump, put this guy into a no momentum position over here, and mainly I'm going to be trying to swing around. I don't know if I want to pick these things off. They're not enough to win me the battle, and if he's got to expend a leader to go rally them, maybe this will develop more nastily. And on the Spartan side, they managed to rout the other unit. I pulled a bump off. I'm just about to clean up here for this. It's not enough to send them over. Cleon went over and rallied everything. Didn't get a continuation, so nothing there. I had a little bit of a screw up, but I fixed it because there's no way. So the particular numbers, and I have no idea, this is the kind of thing that I'm like, wow, I understand that there's a lot going on here, the interaction of the numbers of the leaders, but I really don't think that the scenario balancers, whatever thoughts there are of that, really play too much into that. But the way things are, it is almost impossible for him not to get the last move. Just because we go with a couple of 3s, a couple of 4s, then the 5 has to swing over here. Now, it's possible it might get screwed up. But, for example, if you trump with both your 4s, then you might be going from a 3 back to him. But, it's really, really unlikely. But this kind of dynamic is like, it's a gamey feature that you just kind of shrug your heads, well, however many you may have, but so as I go, you go. This may be better, but it generates certain artifacts that you kind of scratch your head at more, just because we're kind of baked in and used to the I go, you go. Our total is 85 to 57 now. Cleon's yeoman-like work down here did a great job. Turning the flank here is changing the nature of the battle. And I don't know, it feels really kind of up in the air. In fact, it feels like the Spartans are beginning to take the lead, but man, this flank is just crushed. I'm trying to throw something together there. And this could end up with both players going over within the course of the next turn. All right. This interminable battle continues. We went through the 3s. Spartans a little bit too cautious, maybe, just focusing on recovering these units. Didn't get any continuations. They probably would have been trump attempts if I had, because of the exposure here. But I didn't want to hit that with shitty units. That's sort of my win there, right? 28 points. I could have gotten lucky. The question is, I'm quite a ways still behind. I'm almost 20 points behind the point at which I route, and I don't think that this formation is going to be able to generate that many points this turn. So that caution may be acceptable. It's just, I'm definitely giving them a little bit more rope to play with on this. Cav didn't do much. You know, especially since I'm firing through the palisades and using the harassment techniques, which is movement, that's 2 penalties against me. I need a 0 or a 1 to hit. That's pretty unlikely. You probably have been forgetting at least one of those modifiers much of the time, but this turn I paid attention. That puts us over to the 4 buddies down here. Playing kind of cautious now. They can't really expose things. They're at the higher end of the route level now. Is that really 85? Jesus. That went way up there. Yeah. On the other hand, maybe they need to be a little bit riskier, but I pushed, I didn't feel like I had very, very good stuff. So I was able to hit 1 unit and route it, and otherwise launched an attack on this, but that didn't route anything. And it's difficult because, I mean, I could run the crap out of my units and hope for the best, but that will probably end up generating, you know, my 10 points of route points. Remember, the units can be running, and they don't count against your route total. There's some games that your routing units count against your army morale until they're recovered or whatever. Right? This series doesn't do that. But if you try to rally them, which you kind of want to do because they're points that are running off the board, you might accelerate that process and actually boost those points up. So you kind of have to feel like you got to be careful. And I feel like, yeah, the Spartans are going to get this shot in. There's not much I can do about it. Beginning to feel like I actually don't have any options with the Macedonians that look good. Cleon didn't manage to do anything. He recovered some units down here, reduced his attack surface. He's not far from losing either, right? You know, he also is 20. He's 20 points behind. It's 10 points here. It's 20 here. So, you know, I can't really afford too much risk. And trying to rally a unit cost me another 5. So it's getting closer and closer. But over here, yeah, I can sort of defend this, but not really. And I can't figure out a defense for this. This thing, the only thing that's helping me is that's a little hurt. And this thing might have, you know, significant staying power that's not showing. Same thing with this, you know. Those are good units. They might just take this hit and shrug it off, but every time they get hit, there's a big risk that the game's just over. 14 points is enough to send it out, so yeah. I got a couple more actions over here. I've moved 2 units, and I do not know, you know, I mean, I could launch an attack like down here, but it doesn't really do it. You know what I can do? What I'm thinking is if I could move here, but then here, but I have to make this attack then too. I just don't have enough commands to do it all. Maybe I've got to try to recover some stuff and launch more attacks along here. It's going to kill my units though. I really don't know what to do. And the slow attrition of routing units. I used this guy to try to pin this thing so that it would have to attack both units if it attacks, which pretty much is out of the question. But it's medium infantry. It had to run up and actually hit. And the way that I've got these defenses, they are quite impressive because they cause an extra hit. They cause an extra hit, and the fact it's really 2 hits because the TQ check is 1, and I'm not sure that's supposed to be the case, but it makes it really, really a mighty thing, and it's very difficult to actually dislodge units from it. It makes it a potent defense, which makes this kind of action more interesting. Otherwise, I kind of just rallied these units and moved them forward to prepare for a possible attack, but I'm going to have to undergo a round here no matter what. There's nothing I can do about that. And probably two. Unless something gets clogged here or something, I don't know. But even if it does, it can move out at high expense. And that's it for another turn. More expenses. This would be the end. I threw this light unit in throwing a javelin, but I threw both of these in as well to get it on off oomph. Now there's a mixture there because they're going across the gully, so they have a penalty. But, you know, screw it, let's do it. Right? Well, I got huge amounts of hits, right? 3 times on here, I did like 9 hits to those 2 units. Threw one up to about an 11. So that's a +4 on the die roll. The other one significantly less. But both routing, you know, but they got their saving throws. And they both succeeded. And then they got their, hey, I'm almost near breaking. And they succeeded at that too. I mean, these are good units with that 7 morale. The big question was that +4 roll. You know, I needed to roll a 3 or less for that to survive. But you can see how sturdy this thing is. The fact that it can survive, you know, being hit in the flank, triple damage, and 2 phalanxes hitting it. And it just, yep, I'm good. The second guy did the same thing, UCDs or whatever here, and he smashed one of them. And that's enough. That's gonna end it here. We know the game's ending. The question is just, you know, can enough damage be done to the Spartans? But it looks unlikely. So I'll just finish this sucker up and finally, it's that I'm finally kind of getting used to the system again, or if it's more a matter of the terrain here is causing weirder shit to happen. But yeah, I'm trumping in a little bit more than usual. So this guy smashed in here and broke this unit, and then got a momentum, and then I trump in to prevent it and see if I can cause more damage elsewhere and just rack up the score. And Cleon launches an attack on this that fails, and then an attack here that sort of succeeds. He broke another one of them big phalanxes. I don't see a way around this. We're looking at 28 more points. That puts me to 109. I don't know what the hell I could do with him, but I'm going to call it here because, you know, you can't rally these units. Maybe I could do something around the edges and route a unit that's not going to disappear immediately. But I don't think any points are going to go, and I've spent too much time on this battle already. Oh, I have him too. But, you know, I think it's just over. And that's just too many points with the Macedonian line breaking. We're looking at a 13-point gain I'd have to make. Neither of these is going to come off the map. And that's just to get sort of the Pyrrhic loss, I guess, in the sense that, like, you know, we're still talking about another 13 points on top of that. There's just no way I'm going to get 26 points here. And I am tired of this battle and don't really feel like continuing to push those last few pieces around. I mean, yeah, it's just going to be some pointless die rolling. So up goes Sellasia. I mean, the thing we learn is, yes, interesting terrain makes these battles very, very different and interesting, but also maybe too much of a pain to play out. And there's, you know, it makes sense. The commanders didn't want to field these forces in this kind of terrain when they could avoid it. These things just didn't hold up well. They were too much of a pain. They would tire out. They would fall apart. It doesn't mean that you don't seek defensible terrain when you can get it, but it does mean that whenever possible, you know, you would attempt to force your enemy, you know, if you're on the offensive, force your enemy into a position where they're not going to be in this kind of defensible terrain. And this isn't, you know, mighty defense, right? Although these trenches did prove to be a little too much for my taste. You know, if I had shown the patience that I showed through the first half of this video, trying to curve around here, trying to curve around here, never really engaging in the front. But eventually I just got sick and tired of it and launched that frontal assault. And nothing in the rulebook led me, like nothing in the description of it led me to believe that this was sort of as potent a defensive structure as it appears to be. It could be that the cumulative effect between the gully and oh no, I think the cumulative effects between the gully and the fortification are intended, and they're not that big a deal. The big deal is probably the assessing the tactical quality as one of the places where you're guaranteed to take a hit when you attack. But it wasn't really hitting the line that hurt. I broke through the line. It was these unmaneuverable big formations trying to deal in a tightly packed space. And yeah, you just can't afford to commit them if there's any other way when the terrain is this bad. Anyway, up it goes.